Don't touch mine.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Whoscussion. We are on part B. We'll be discussing the Way of All Flesh, an 8th Doctor comic book strip, and To Cut a Blade of Grass. The Way of All Flesh, I'll just jump right into it. The Way of All Flesh is the story based just after, obviously, the one that we just spoke about, but it's essentially the first adventure Izzy has in her new form. They're in 1941 Mexico on the Day of the Dead. I can't pronounce the actual name for it, so I'm just going to call it the Day of the Dead. Sorry if that...
Dia de los Muertos.
There we go. Thank you, Harriet Skelly. We see Frida Kahlo and her husband Diego Rivera, who were very famous artists. Frida, I believe, turned out to be way more famous than Diego. She's a pretty renowned female figure in the art world. I know Diego was pretty popular as well, but I think Frida must have overshadowed him at some point. The interesting thing about this comic is they show the relationship being a pretty jovial one, but from what I've read about the relationship, it kind of really wasn't. So it's interesting they play it this way. I suppose it's because the comics for all audiences, even though there's a heck of a lot of violence in this story, speaking of how people get killed.
Yeah, this one is kind of not the child-friendly story at all.
It's pretty ruthless. So the first thing we see is Frida and Diego going to a festival at one of their friends' houses, and they accidentally run over Izzy in her new fish form. And they take her back to their place, and Izzy's mumbling some about the doctor, and Diego decides to go looking for her. And I love how Diego's like, hang on, she never explained to me what he looks like. Who am I even looking for? And because it's Doctor Who, he stumbles upon the Doctor, and they find out that there's a whole lot of craziness going on. There's a rather gorgeous looking spaceship that looks more like a sculpture, and then Izzy wakes up, explains her current situation, and you find out that some ghosts are appearing all over the show. I was just like, oh, really? And then you find out very quickly that they are not ghosts, and Izzy saves Frida. Frida doesn't want to be saved at first because she's like, no, it's my papa. And she's like, no, it is not your papa.
Not
this
at all.
is an evil, scary alien thing. And it's a race of beings. They are called the Torrigen, and I like their design. They're very comic book demon. You know, they've got their classic comic book demon look.
They've got horns and stuff. It actually looks great.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But you find out they're actually working together with this being. She calls herself Suzanne, and she basically just looks like a blue moldy.
I guess.
Yeah, she looks like a blue moldy. She got the facial structure. She got the moko. I was just like, are you a blue moldy? So she's a blue space moldy.
She's very slender and tall, sort of like a blend of the moldy and the African tribe that have the neck extenders on. Yeah, it looks like they'd went for a blend of different races, which is interesting. Is particularly because of the way that she treats death, which is something that a lot of I guess a lot of non-Western cultures respect death in different ways, particularly the way that of their art forms.
So it's basically these beings. They've lost the ability to have flesh because of some crazy war they had, and the Doctor's like, "Let me guess, you're going to take the flesh of the human race?" And they're like, "Yep, that's exactly what we're going to do." So they end up selling the flesh of the human race in pretty brutal ways, and this works so much better than that episode of Class. The dead coming back, and they're actually secretly vicious aliens, works so much better in this than it did in Patrick Ness's Class.
Yeah.
So they come back as these ethereal ghosts, and they fill you with joy. They have this ability to fill you with a sense of joy that is pretty much intoxicating, and then you're compelled to love these beings as if they were the people returned from the dead. And how they get the likeness isn't through telepathy, but through photography, which I thought was interesting because families without photographs of their deceased wouldn't be visited by these things. So they kind of lower down their victim pool a bit.
But they weren't. It seemed like they were getting basically what they needed from just one city, really.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like they were intending on actually killing every single person on Earth to get what they needed. It seems like they were just planning on taking a couple. But of course, the reason why their ability to do this, and the reason why they're there in the first place is for Suzini, who is a necrotist. I'm pretty sure that word is for something else, but in the Doctor Who, in the Whoniverse, it means it is for an artist that is trying to create the ultimate expression of art by killing people and putting their remains as this form. It's a very interesting villain in the way that the Doctor Who goes. Honestly, it's a bit different to the way that normal mass murderers go. It seems a little bit more psychotic, honestly, and Doctor Who doesn't really go into that sort of spectrum. I mean, it does in the ways of like Davros and stuff are kind of psychotic, but in a different way. They're doing it to make their race ultimate, not just to make a pretty thing, which is interesting. But the most curious thing about this is that the thing that she's trying to make is basically just a pillar of skeletons.
Yes.
And at the end of the story, they say that they're just going to leave it. Where is there a pillar of skeletons in Mexico? Because I want to see it.
Well, there is an entire church made out of bones in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, that is true.
But
where is there a tower of skeletons?
There isn't. I'm guessing it only exists in the Whoniverse, because it definitely doesn't exist in real life. And looking at the Wikipedia page, it definitely doesn't exist in real life. So it's a Whoniverse thing. It'd be interesting to see in the background in like a New Who episode. There's just a pile of bones.
There's a pile of bones.
And then like Bill could just be like, "I'm sorry, but is there a pile of skeletons? Don't talk about that one, Billy."
Sorry about that.
It's a long story.
It also means that like there's a bunch of humans that had just randomly died that day.
Yeah.
Like a crap load of them. There's some big sculpture. So why does no one talk about this?
And they die so viciously.
Yeah.
It's so brutal. I was like, whoa, the artwork in this is unbelievably gory. It's Doctor Who, man.
Intense. Yeah. It was very intense. Very intense.
Yeah. So you can pick this up along with everything else that we've talked about in the past couple of weeks in this series of Eighth Doctor in a publication called Oblivion. So pick that up. You can get it from Comixology. It's like nothing on Comixology. Comixology are an app, and also they're available as a PC interface in which you can read them in ebook format on any device. And
if you want to pick it up in a hard format, I haven't yet found a website that provides them, but local comic book stores seem to stock one or two of them.
Yes.
As it doesn't seem to get purchased a lot of, but of course they printed a lot, so there'll be a couple of comic book stores in your area that probably have them.
And we're in a pretty, I wouldn't say the largest city, and we've got a couple of copies at our comic store. So
we have a comic. In fact, there is a comic store down the street from me that has it. I can guarantee that. So.
Harry's going to have had a couple of discussions about that. I'm pretty much looking about picking that up when I've got the Daenerys. So we'll head on to So we're going to head over Dr. Mysterio.
We're going to plan this, guys.
I love that, eh? To cut a blade of grass, the Sixth Doctor short trip. Harry, Scully, take us away.
All right, so this one is an interesting one. It doesn't really. It's another, I guess, kind of Doctor Light story, where it doesn't even seem like a Doctor Who episode in the beginning of it, where it follows this nice lady named Rosie. It's interesting. Her name is Rosie, not Rose.
Not Rose.
It's really weird that we have to make that distinction these days. Anyway. She's just, going on about her day, taking care of her father who has had a stroke. She goes to visit him in hospital, just to make sure he's okay, does her natural stuff, talks to the nurse. The nurse says that apparently he's a little bit more, doesn't have as much energy today because he's already seen someone today. And she's like, hey, I don't know anybody who actually knows if he's here, so who was it? And she's like, oh, this really oddly dressing chap. And we're like, of course. And then she goes away, comes back, and there's another woman just randomly in his room, or it seems to be a nurse, putting him in a wheelchair. And she's like, hey, what are you doing? And then Perry says, oh, it's we're just standing him up. But he's got to get his strength back somehow. And then she walks away. It's so obviously, Perry is so obviously the way that it does. It's so interesting the way that they play that out, with the Doctor and his companion just sort of showing up and not really showing up at the same time. It's very curious. But of course, she just accepts the fact that there's this nurse who's doing that. So she just continues to talk to her dad, reads him a book, goes home for the night, and then gets a call from the hospital saying that her dad has just gone missing randomly. So she's freaking out, all that stuff. And then she comes in the next day, and he's back, and he seems to be a lot more energetic and stuff. So she's kind of happy with that. That's all nice. She goes back. She's just like, they probably just like took him away for some tests or something, and obviously were incorrect, but no harm was done. He's fine. But he does seem to be in a lot higher spirits for some reason. She's not quite sure about that one. She leaves, and she meets up with the Doctor, who's weirdly talking about parsnips. I don't know why he's doing that. It doesn't make any sense at all, but hey, it's the Sixth Doctor.
I love he just goes on about it for ages, and she's like, cool story, bro.
It's for so long, I don't understand. Eventually, they get into the proper conversation where she's talking about how she's got an English degree, and she wants to start writing, but she wants to actually have money to pay the bills, because writing is not lucrative at all, trust me. And the Doctor is like, well, as much as having a business degree is nice, and you can pay for your stuff, it is a discernible skill, but it's not something that you'll be remembered for if you're just a CEO of a company somewhere, instead of having some glorious writing for someone to read for generations to come. And then he disappears. And then we find out that what was happening was the Doctor came to talk to him, talk to her dad, eventually took him forward into the future to where Rosie gets married. So she's going to see her dad again, even though she obviously
he's going to bite it.
He is going to bite it, unfortunately, and that's why he's so happy at the end, because he's like, I don't care. I got to see what I wanted to see, and then explains that this guy, her dad, is not actually a particularly important part of the universe. He's not like a grand. He's not the Grand Marshal of some devious race that he's teleported away or anything like that. He's just a baker who makes fantastic Cornish pastries, apparently, and that's the reason why the Doctor just does what he wants. Shows him his daughter's wedding, helps him out basically, and also talks Rosie into effectively talks her into being a great writer instead of going into business, which obviously works out for her as he's able to go forward in time and she's getting married. So clearly she didn't die of starvation or anything. So it's a nice feel-good story, you know?
Yeah. Which is weird because it's the Sixth Doctor doing it.
I know, like I was kind of expecting some terrible things to happen, like the Doctor was actually like pulling him away because he had like some terrible alien in him that was killing him or something like that. But no, Doctor was just being a nice guy, and Perry was generally just being Perry. It was a good time. I highly recommend filling a break with it. It was good.
You can pick this up in a Volume 4 box set called Doctor Who Short Trips Volume 4. And you can also listen to it for free in a lower bitrate quality on the SoundCloud. I definitely suggest, if you can afford it, just to pick up pick it up digitally, and just support Big Finish, as they give us probably some of the best content we're probably going to get from Doctor Who, probably going forward, actually. Well, that's us for the year. This is our final episode for the year. It's going up on New Year's Eve, and we'll catch you all in the new year. See you all then.
Bye.